Well, good morning. Man, it's May. I don't know how many of you guys have been singing an NSYNC song, but it always gets stuck in my head when we're doing this. It is May, and this series we've been talking about this idea of more than Sunday. What the idea behind this series is, we had Easter, and at Easter we talk about the resurrection. It is the event. Like, if there is no resurrection of Jesus, there's no point in any of us sitting here. It's a really, really big event. But how do you carry the power of the resurrection forward into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? What does that look like? And so we've spent some time over the last couple of weeks looking at real areas in our life. We looked at work and how do we carry the power of the resurrection and what it means to be a follower of Jesus into our workplace. Last week we talked about identity, who we really are, not what we do, but who is it that we are at our core, and then everything stems out from that. And Christian and I we did an amazing podcast that has a lot more material in it on identity. If you go to our YouTube channel, you can catch up on that podcast. And both of those were really good messages. Some of them might have been difficult for you, but this one I think is probably going to be the hardest message of them all. Not because the theology is complicated, but because the topic is this. And I understand that when a pastor starts talking about money, something just happens in the room, doesn't it? Like, some of you didn't know if you should laugh. Like what am I going to do with this? You know, people's guard goes up, and I get it, honestly, because it's fair. There have been lots of pastors in recent history, over history, that have used a lot of techniques, manipulation things, guilt things, to pressure people into doing things that maybe they weren't ready to do, should not have done. So I understand if there's tension around this, but here's the thing. Our culture talks about money constantly, doesn't it? Everything that you see, everywhere that you go, culture has something to say about money. Every ad that you see is helping you make a financial decision. There are so many great financial podcasts, like, hey, here's how I did this. Here's how I started a business. Here's what I done with this. And it seems to me lately the conversation around money and how to handle money and what should we do with money is coming from everywhere but church. And I've been guilty of that as well, because I know that the abuses have been there, so we clam up and we don't talk a whole lot about money. But if we live in a world that tells us that our worth, your identity, like we talked about last week, your worth is tied to your net worth, and everything around what they say is just get what you can, hold on to it, get as much as you can. Whether we realize it or not, as followers of Jesus, that seeps into us because it's so prevalent. It's the water that we swim in. And this is why I think a lot of us spend the way we spend and probably have some of the stress and anxiety that we have. Because when the church goes silent on money or only shows up with guilt, the only thing left is what culture has to say about money. And what I know, and I've been doing this pastoring thing for 30-something years now. If you follow what culture says about money, you may acquire money. You may have more money than you've ever had in your life, but you're also going to have more debt and more stress and more anxiety and more fights. It is still true that one of the biggest contributors to people getting a divorce is money, how they handle it, what they're hiding, what they're doing, the stress that it causes. So when culture tells us that you just need to accumulate more, you just need to get more, what culture will not tell you is all the problems that it's going to cause. Like, that doesn't work well in an ad. And I get it, churches all the time, we get, all the church wants is your money. That is not true, and I've said this before. Do you know what Target wants from you? Do you guys know what Costco wants from you? The only thing they want is your money. Churches want more than that. And I'm sorry that we've, come across some things that are difficult. So what I'm going to do today, I want to try to do something different, is I don't want to talk to you as a pastor, because that's going to put you on edge and everything. If you will allow me to have the honor to do it, I want to talk to you like you're sitting across the table from me, and this is what a good dad conversation would be like. Now, some of you have had bad dad conversations. I really understand this. But imagine having a good dad conversation where dad knows a thing or two, and he's able to look into your life and say, hey, I need to talk to you about some things. Because a good dad doesn't wait until you completely screw up your life to then go, you know what? I should have told you this sooner, but now that you screwed up your life, let me go ahead and tell you how you don't screw up your life. That's not a good dad. A good dad looks at what's going on, and he says, hey, there's a few things that I know that I want to be able to help you so that when you encounter something, you'll know what to do with that. So if you give me the honor to do that, that's really how I want to talk to you, is like a dad having a conversation, not a pastor trying to build a theological argument. And I want to start by telling you something about me and about my wife, Jody. A long time ago, I feel like we've been married, this will be 33 years, I think. I feel like it starts like a fairy tale. A long time ago in a land far, far away. 33 years ago. My wife and I, before we had any idea of what our life was going to look like 30-something years later, we made a decision. And it was as we were getting married, we were having a conversation, and the decision that we made was that we were going to give back to God 10% of our income always. No questions asked. And we never sat down and said, we'll start giving when things are easy, or when things settle down. Not someday. We just said, hey, we're going to do this. And so we started out in our marriage, and almost instantly, and if you're here and you're young and you're not married yet, all of us who have been married for a while can testify to what I'm going to say. Almost instantly, life gets more expensive, doesn't it? Like when you're living at home and mom and dad are taking care of everything, it's awesome. You have lots of money. You can do all kinds of things. You move out on your own, especially today, moving out on your own, life gets instantly more expensive. And so the same thing happened for us. And we just made the decision we're going to give. And then kids started to arrive. And if you have kids, you know what a kid does to your budget. They're expensive. I mean, some of the studies are out there to raise a child. This is not a sermon for birth control, but to raise a child is going to cost you between $400,000 and $500,000. And that's on the low end. Some estimates I saw, it's going to cost you $1 million to raise a child. So some of you kids, you need to look at mom and dad right now and go, thank you very much. But we had kids, and the expenses, I'm telling you, when you have kids, the expenses don't creep up, they jump up. And all of a sudden you're paying for things that you never accounted for, and so that happened to us. And it would have been really easy when that happened to begin to look at our finances and say, we probably need to back down off of our giving. Because when you would look at the expenses, it's not like we suddenly made a whole bunch more money when we had kids. The math didn't add up. Like, how are we going to add all this expense and continue to give like we did? It would have been easy, but we didn't. And then the kids got older. And kids want to do things. Activities cost money. I know they don't understand that. We had travel ball, we had band, we had all kinds of other different sports that were going on, things that cost real money, things that you say yes to because you want your kids to have a good experience. How many of you have said yes to vacations that you like, we really don't want to spend the money, but we want our kids to have an experience, and so we say yes. And so we had those. And every new season was a new version of that conversation. Okay, well, where's this money going to come from? How are we going to be able to afford this? And there was a reasonable argument for every time that came up to scale back our giving. I could have reasonably said, well, this is just a season. We can't keep doing that because the math, it just doesn't add up. Then we started back into ministry. We spent a spell out of ministry for about 4 or 5 years when we moved here to Charlotte. And God blessed us. We had tremendous success. We worked and helped start a consulting firm. And we went from nothing to, let's just say, sizable. A lot of travel, a lot of money. I'm like, wow, this is what it's like to have money. This is what, as a pastor, I got to go, this is what it's like to be you. And then God called us back into ministry, and we walked away from all of that. Same family, except this time we had more obligations, and we were now dealing with a third to 25% of what the income was before that. And I'm telling you, at that moment, the most practical, responsible thing, I could have talked myself into it would be, we're going to back down on our giving. And we didn't. I know the math doesn't add up. And so we kept giving. And somewhere out there, God began to challenge us to grow beyond giving 10%. And then we reached a place in life where every kid needed a car. So we have 3 kids. You start questioning why you have so many kids at some point. And I go, man, we got 3 kids. How in the world are we going to do this? It's like, they're all going to share. We're going to go get a Yugo. Let's go find one of those things, probably pick them up for $1.50, and they're going to share it. But no, God just kept providing. He provided the cars. He provided the insurance, the maintenance, all of it. And then came college. And we had 3 kids. They all wanted to go to college. I know you don't have to go, but they all wanted to go. And we're like, we're not sure how we're going to be able to do this. And right then would have been a place where we could have said, we need to reevaluate our giving. Because if we're not giving at the percentage that we're giving, I think we might be able to come close to affording college. And we chose not to. Now, the testimony to that is I made my last payment on my daughter's college in January, so I got a raise. Yeah. She doesn't see it that way. And I would be honest about where we're at right now because we've gone through that. The reasonable thing at the age and thing that I'm doing now, I'm 56 years old, would be we need to start taking all of our giving, and we start, maybe not all of it, but at least some of it, we need to start giving less so that we can put more into our retirement because we need to plan for that. I mean, this window of being able to work, it's not going to last forever because the math doesn't make sense. Here's the thing that I want to tell you when it comes to giving. Again, I'm just talking to you as dad, and I've had this conversation with my kids. You can ask them. The math has never added up. And I would add to this, the math will never add up. It will never make sense. I sat with my wife this morning as I was reviewing the message. I said, let's add up how much tuition in college and all that should have cost for all 3 of our children. It was a mind-blowing number. The math doesn't add up. And I can never explain how our finances work, except that God is involved in our finances. It's the only thing that makes sense. I can't explain it on paper. And I've said this before, and you should fact check me. You should fact check any pastor or any person who stands on stage to make sure what they're saying is accurate. The last time I said this, thank you. Some of you didn't believe me, and you went and asked my wife and found out that it was true. In 33 years, and I attribute it to the decision that we made to give 10%, we have never, not one time, had a fight about money. Not once. It's just something about giving, it removes you from getting into places that create the kind of stress, I guess. But I'm not promising you that. I'm just saying that we have never had a fight. Because we just know the math's never going to add up. It's never going to make sense. So that's my story. Here's what I know about your story, about you and money. You have a money story. Your life, your money, and how you spend it and how you save it and what you do with it has a story. Every single person in this room, every single person watching us online, you have a story about money. And here's what I also know. Most of us, if not all of us, have never told the full story. Not with all the details, not the real version, not the one with actual numbers, the actual anxiety or the decisions that we made or regretted. Most of us, we've probably never told. We've told versions of it, but probably not the full story. You know, I just told you part. This is a very small piece of my money story. But what I didn't tell you in that story was that in every one of those places, all the anxiety that would come up about having to make a decision, like how are we going to do that? I'm not sure how that's going to work out. I didn't bring up the fact that I would wake up in the middle of the night going, okay, God, the math is not adding up here. I have no idea how this is going to happen. And I'm feeling all kinds of anxiety around this decision. I didn't tell you that. That was all still there. We just made a decision. You know what? We're going to keep giving anyway. I'm not going to be afraid because I'm just going to trust that God is in it. And again, this is why I'm not up here to lecture you. Because honestly, no one wants to hear a lecture from their dad or from their pastor. I just want to if we sat down and sat across the table, I would just explain to you what we've done and what has happened and how it makes absolutely no sense. Because what I know about money, and it's true of me and it's true of you, money is personal, almost in a way that nothing else is. It touches everything. It touches your security. It touches your identity. It touches your marriage, your self-worth, the fear of what tomorrow might look like. Money is pretty powerful in what it does. And when money is tight, how many of you would say nothing is okay when money is tight? I never meet someone and go, you know what, we can't pay all our bills. Life is awesome. It's just great. Now, when money's tight, nothing's good. It's almost like when you're in a fight with your wife, nothing's good. Like it's not good. And when money is good, you can convince yourself that everything is great and everything is right, even when it's not. It's a pretty powerful thing. It just has this grip on us. And I have watched with people year after year of what happens to them when they kind of wrestle with this whole money question with trying to do it alone and listening to what culture has to say about money. And the other thing I would say, especially those of us in the room who are following Jesus, if you're not following Jesus, you kind of get a pass on what I'm talking about. But if you are, I can say this because I have been here. I know this. I think most of us would say that we trust God. We sing songs about it, right? We mean it. You trust God. But when the topic of money comes up and someone asks us a question about money, especially if it's at a level that's going to require real trust about God, all of a sudden the conversation, at least in our head, I don't know if we would ever say it out loud, switches into something like, well, now I need to be responsible. Like generosity, there's generosity, but I need to be responsible. And somehow responsible ends up looking exactly like what it is that you want to do anyway with a prayer thrown on top. I've been there. I know. Money is the area that I think we've just agreed to keep off the table. You can talk about just about anything in a small group. And honestly, here we say your story is safe here. You can talk about anything in a small group. But the churches that I grew up in, you could talk about just about anything. But you start bringing up money, even in a small group conversation, people start squirming. You know? Because maybe you're talking about money because you need some help. And then in your small group, it's like, well, I'm not able to help. I'm up to debt in my eyeballs. I don't know what I'm going to do about that. And so, we'll change the subject and everything. And I think this is terrible because I've watched couples who genuinely love each other fight about money to the point that their relationship dissolved. I've watched people make decisions out of fear and then just spend years trying to make up for what really was a bad decision. I've watched anxiety about money just keep compounding and compounding and compounding in people's lives. And they believe, I just need more. I just need more. I need more. I need more. And the thing about needing more is it's never quite enough, is it? Because once you get to the place where you have more, the line moves. We call it chasing the carrot. You're just chasing the carrot. It's just always out there in front of you. I would imagine, unless you're a young person in this room, every single one of you, if you could go back to the 20-year-old version of yourself and tell them what you make now, they would go, good God, you're rich. Wouldn't they? You know, but the line moved. I need more and more. And it causes so much problems. We talk a lot about margin here. And margin is simply this. If you make this amount of money and this is your spending level, this is your lifestyle, guess what you have? No margin and large levels of anxiety. Some people, their money is here and their lifestyle is here. The goal is that your money is here and your lifestyle is here. And what's in between is called peace. I watch people because culture says, no, don't do the responsible thing. Don't have margin. Spend it all. And for those of us that follow Jesus, let's get into the text now so it's not just me. Jesus had a lot to say about money and topics of money and things around money, and you can go and read all of those. But we're going to look at a story today where someone encounters Jesus. There really is no recorded conversation about money, but something changes in how this person handles their money. It's a great story. So if you want to follow along, you can go to our events page. You can click the YouVersion notes to follow, or you just open your Bible. We're going to be in Luke chapter 19. And as a short person, this is one of my favorite stories in the whole Bible because it's the story about a short person. When I was in kids' church, we would sing a story about this guy named Zacchaeus. How many of you grew up in church and sang a story about Zacchaeus? He was a wee little man, and a wee little man was he. Little did I know that would be me. So this is the story. Luke chapter 19, verse 1. Jesus enters Jericho, and he made his way through the town, and there was a man there named Zacchaeus. He was the chief tax collector in the region, and he had become very rich. So we need to pause right here. There's a couple of things for us to understand that gives us some contextual clues as to what's going on. He says that he's a chief tax collector. Tax collectors, you've probably heard in some version or some sermon somewhere, and maybe you're new to church and you haven't. What would happen is Rome would hire basically independent contractors to go collect the Roman tax. And they would come with Roman soldiers to collect the tax. What Rome allowed them to do is they didn't pay them anything to collect tax. So whatever you collect over and above the tax that needs to come back to Rome, you get to keep for yourself. So eventually what happens with humans is they start extorting people. They're charging 3 times, 4 times, 5. They could charge whatever they want. And if you did not pay it, the Roman soldiers would arrest you and take you away. So you had to pay it. So because of this, and these weren't Roman citizens. These were Jewish people doing it to their own people. And so if you were a tax collector, you were not just, we don't like them, despised. You were horrible. You were a traitor of all things. You were not allowed, if you were a tax collector, because you were considered unclean because of what you did, you could not go to temple, which meant your sins could never be forgiven. You couldn't go to any social functions. So yeah, you made a lot of money, but you really couldn't be around anyone except other Romans who didn't care about that kind of stuff. And it says he was the chief tax collector. What this meant was he set up a consulting firm, and he hired a lot of tax consultants, and he sent them out. And he made money on top of the money that they made. He had a little business going. Chief tax collector in the region. Verse 3. So he tried to get a look at Jesus, but he was too short to see over the crowd. I can identify with that. Every school picture, I'm at the front row with all the girls. I get it. It's there. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree beside the road, for Jesus was going to pass by that way. I love the details. So you have this very wealthy person he's a very powerful man. Yeah, they despise him, but he is very powerful. The role he is in is really powerful. And he decides that he's going to climb a tree to see Jesus wearing a robe. Just think that through. He wanted to see Jesus badly enough that he would slightly humiliate himself. But also, he's just going to watch. He didn't try to press forward to get to Jesus. He's just going to climb a tree. So he wants to see Jesus from a distance. Not sure that he really wants to get up close. When Jesus came by, he looked up at Zacchaeus and pulled out his phone to film something for TikTok. He looked up at this little guy in a tree, and he calls him by name. Zacchaeus, quick, come down. I must be a guest in your home today. Now, if you read past that, you miss some things that are important here. Anywhere in here did Zacchaeus ask for this? Anywhere in here did Zacchaeus say, hey, Jesus, I need you to come to my house? No. There's nothing Zacchaeus does to earn it. He doesn't have to work up for it. He doesn't really have to have the courage to introduce himself. Jesus saw him, called him by name, and then invited himself over. Jesus initiated the relationship. That's always true. And this is the moment everything changes for Zacchaeus. I mean, he's up in a tree. He's thinking, okay, some people are going to see me, but Jesus isn't going to see me. I'm going to see this guy that I've heard these stories about. The later verses tells us Zacchaeus comes down. They go to his house, and all of the Jewish people that are around are like talking crap about Zacchaeus and now Jesus, because how dare you go to this horrible person's house? How do you have dinner? Invite him over to your home, this sinner, this horrible human. How could you do that? But inside the house, something's happening. Now, we don't get a transcript of the conversation. No one records what it is that Jesus says, so we don't know exactly what Jesus said. We don't know how long that they talked. What we know is that Zacchaeus went into his house as one person, and he left his house completely different. We do know that. Something shifted inside that house. Something broke open. And when he stands up to speak, what he says is not some sort of religious thing. The very first words Zacchaeus talks about that get recorded is about money. Meanwhile, Zacchaeus stood before the Lord and said, I will give half my wealth to the poor. Lord, and if I have cheated people on their taxes, I will give them back 4 times as much. Jesus didn't ask him to do this. There was no sermon that Jesus delivered about generosity. There was no challenge, no guilt. Again, we don't have it recorded, but there's nothing to lead us to believe that Jesus was having a conversation with Zacchaeus and then said, now, Zacchaeus, about your money. It's just he has an encounter with Jesus. And something shifted. And the thing that shifted in him was how he dealt with his money and what he had done. Half his possessions to the poor, and 4 times as repayment to someone who he had cheated. This is important because we don't understand this. So in Jewish law, if you had cheated someone and wronged them and you came out and confessed it rather than being caught, you would have to pay back what you had stolen plus 20%. That was Jewish law. In Roman law, if you had stolen from someone, you paid back 4 times what you stole. This is an important thing because Zacchaeus didn't take the minimum. He went for the maximum. He was so changed. He said, I'm not going to take the easy way out. I am going to take the most difficult path that there is. This is a man whose heart has been changed. And this is how Jesus responds to this statement. Salvation has come to this home today. For this man has shown himself to be a true son of Abraham, for the Son of Man came to seek and save those who are lost. Salvation. Like, what is he saved from? He's saved from living that horrible life that he was living and all the pressure and everything that went with it. And it came to his whole house because that's money penetrates into everything. And then he declares this over him. Someone who cannot go to temple, someone who's been told that you are such a bad Jew, we don't even declare you to be a Jew. You are not one of us. He had been told that from the day he stepped into the role that he is in. You are a true son of Abraham. Jesus went right into his identity. Everybody else has said this about you, but now because of this encounter, your identity has been completely changed. You're not a traitor. You're not a thief. You're not someone who is despised by your neighbors. You are a true son of Abraham. You belong. You have been restored. You're part of the family. And the evidence of that change was the money had changed. And this is the connection that Jesus is making. The generosity wasn't a condition for his new identity. It was the proof of it. He didn't give all of that in order to acquire a new identity. He made that decision to give all of that away because the identity had already changed, which is exactly what we've been saying this whole series. When the power of the resurrection enters your life, everything about you changes. How you deal with work, what your identity is, how you handle your money, what you do with rest. All of these things matter. And here's what I want you to sit with Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus wasn't generous because he was a good person who finally got his act together. That is not the story. He was generous because he met Jesus, and he was never the same after that. Because when something truly changes on the inside, how you handle your money will follow. Which brings us to the question, kind of the whole series I've been sitting with. If the resurrection is actually true, if you are, as we talked about in week 1, a brand new creation, you are new. If the old really is gone and the new is here, what does your checking account say about that? Not what do you say about it. What does your account actually reflect? How you treat your money. And that's not a guilt question. If you're taking it to guilt, I don't mean it's a guilt. It's a diagnostic question because so many of us, we will tell ourselves that we are generous, but our bank account might tell a different story. So what do we do with all of this? Okay, let me give you 3 areas to kind of take some action, to take a look at, just to help. Again, there's no, we're not waiting at the doors, with a credit card machine before you leave. That's not the application. I want you to look at who you are and just spend some time with Jesus. And the first thing is look at your bank account like it's a mirror. Look at your bank account like it's a mirror. Don't look at it to feel guilty. Just look at it for what it actually is. Most of us don't do this. Go back 90 days, pull up 3 months worth of detailed reports on what you spent your money on. Because this will clear the air, not what you intended to spend your money on. I'm sure that was one thing. What you actually spent your money on. It tells you where your values really are. It tells you what you're afraid of. It tells you what you actually trust. Again, most of us have a version of ourselves that we think that we are when it comes to money. And usually it's a better version of ourselves. It's more generous, it's kind, it's all these things. Money is one of these places where it will actually tell you. You say, well, I believe I'm a kind person. You really don't have a record that you can go to, but if you say I'm a generous person, there you can go and you can see. Money is one of those places that it's just facts. You can look at the actual numbers and then determine, is there a gap between who I think I am and who I really am? Maybe you spend more money, significantly more money, on food than you do than what you thought. I remember the first time we were sitting down, I was like, well, why is our food budget so high? Like, why are we, well, Clay, you eat too much. Maybe you'll look at it and go, man, look at all these purchases that I just make because I'm so anxious, and when I'm anxious, I go and shop. Or maybe giving is the category that you look at and you go, wow, I really thought we gave more than that. I mean, you're not going to know until you go and you look. And I'm not sitting here telling you what the mirror should show you. That's not it. Go look at it, and what does it show you? That's an easy step you can do. The second might be a little bit harder, but let me challenge you. Make one generous decision that you'd normally talk yourself out of. You ever have those moments your thought is like, oh, boy, I really should do something right there. My wife and I had an opportunity this week to do that. There was a situation that came up. We had a conversation, and we both made a decision. We were going to do something, and we were going to be generous, and we did it. Those are the kind of things you could talk it, well, you know, we need that money for later, and we got this thing coming up, and we're about to travel, and there's this bill. Make one decision that you'd normally talk yourself out of, and do it. Pick a person, pick an organization, pick a church, and say, you know what? We're just going to do it. Sit down with the person who you share your finances with. If you're married, you know, the person you're married to. And you sit down and you say, you know what? Before we make any decisions this month, let's pray about our finances. And as a part of that prayer, God, is there somewhere or something that we need to be generous this month? And then do it. Just say, hey, we're going to do it. The math will never make sense. It will never add up. Don't go, we're going to do it because, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's not going to happen that way. But make one decision. And if you're kind of on your own, have a conversation with yourself. Maybe not out loud where people can see you and think you're crazy, but have a conversation. Which leads me to the third thing. Bring God into the budget conversation before there's a crisis. God always gets invited when your financial life blows up. Like, oh, God, help me. God, I want you in my finances. And God is gracious. He's not like me. I'd be like, well, you didn't want me before. Good luck. Like, God is a much better being than I am. But if you're eventually going to invite God into the process, why don't you go ahead and invite God into the process right now before there's a crisis? Again, part of that conversation could be we're going to pray. And God, what do you want us to do here? I mean, God, do we really trust you? What are we going to do? And here's what I really want to wrap up with, because it's something that I've watched happen over and over in our church. The most generous people I know are not always the most wealthy. We tend to think that, oh, they're wealthy and they're generous. I encounter people here at Next Level who would not be the most wealthy people. We have people that are wealthy and are very generous here. But some of the most generous people here are not someone who you would look at and go, wow, I mean, they've got it together. Because trust is not a financial category. It's a spiritual faith category, which means anybody can do it. Whether you got a little bit or whether you got a lot. And sometimes it's easier when you got a little bit. Because when you buy your couch at Goodwill and you have an old beater that your parents gave you and you're still driving it 10 years later and you ain't got much, God, you can have it all. I don't want all this crap anyway. Then you start to get stuff and you're like, I don't know about that, God. That's an 8-way hand-tied couch over there, like nice Corinthian leather. Invite God in because it's a faith thing. I mentioned this back in week 1. Here's where we are as a church. We have more people coming to Next Level now than we've had in a lot of years. And it's really exciting to see what God is doing. And what that has done for us is sit and go, well, how do we best take care of people? How do we continue to build things that allow people to make connections and grow, experience Jesus in a lot of different ways? How do we do this? And what we've determined is like, yeah, we need to do these things, and it's going to cost us about 30% more than what it costs us right now. So that's what we're looking at. But on top of that, we need to grow our volunteer base by 50%. We need a lot more of you to serve. And it would be easy for me to kind of not talk about that. Because, hey, we just talked about money, and it would be easy, but I'm not going to apologize for that because that's the reality. I mean, that's where we're at. And I'm not asking you to give because the church needs money. I'm not asking you to volunteer because the church needs volunteers. I'm inviting you to be a part of something that God is doing. There's a difference. One is an obligation. One is an opportunity. And the same God, this is what I believe, who has shown up for my family over and over and over through many different things, and the math never adds up, is going to be the same God that accomplishes whatever it is that we need to accomplish. So I'm not stressed about it. But I would like for you to play a role in it. I know I'm going to play a role in it. I would love for you to play a role in that. The resurrection means that the God who defeated death is the same God that can be trusted with your finances. And that is either true or it's not true. There's no in between. If Sunday really happened, then Monday's budget is a faith decision, not a math problem. And that's what I would leave you with. Let me pray for us as we head out of here. As you're beginning to pray, what I want to do is I just want to give you a moment to respond to whatever God has been stirring up inside of you. This is a personal conversation that you can have with God right in your head right now, in your mind. Whatever He's been talking to you about, whatever He's been speaking, I would hope your answer is yes, Lord. Like whatever it is, yes, Lord. But you have the conversation, God. Maybe there's repenting of things. Maybe there's, okay, God, I'm going to step into that. I'm going to make that decision. I'm going to do something that's scary. I'm going to step out there in faith. I don't know what the conversation is. No one really needs to know except you. Just you and God. And while you're having that conversation, there may be some here today who realize that the issue you have is not just a financial thing. There's a spiritual issue inside of you. You've been keeping God at a safe distance and probably in a lot of different areas, or maybe you, like God, I don't want you to be real. I've met people that's how they feel. God, I don't want you to be real, but I need you. Maybe you're here, or maybe you're watching online, and Jesus, you're just trying to do what Zacchaeus did and climb up a tree and look at Jesus from a distance. I don't really want to get up close and personal, but there is something inside of you right now because Jesus sees you and He's called you by name, and there's something stirring inside of your heart, and He's saying, hey, come down from that position. I want to hang out with you. And if you want to meet Jesus, you can pray this. You don't got to pray it out loud. But don't just repeat words. If you really want to meet Jesus, just use this as a framework. Say whatever you're going to say, but let me pray this. And you speak to Jesus the way you want to speak to Jesus. Jesus, when it comes to you, my whole life has been like a closed room, something that I manage on my own, something that, Jesus, I have never given you access to. But today, I want to open the door. I want to welcome you in. I'm asking you to come in. I want to trust you. I don't just want to say that I trust you. I really want to trust you with everything. My future, my job, my family, all the parts of my life that I've been running on my own. And I've never really given you my life. I've been watching you from a distance. I've been curious. But Jesus, today, you see me. And I want the new life. I want that life that makes the math stop adding up in all the best ways. Jesus, the best I know how to say this, I want you to be my Savior. Start with whatever you want to start with me. Amen. And if you prayed that prayer, I just wanted to say, hey, welcome. Welcome to the kingdom. Now for the rest of us, let me pray something for us. God, thank you that you are not nervous about our finances. Thank you that the same power that raised Jesus from the dead is available to every single person in this room. That power is not just a Sunday power. It's not just something that we walk in here with, but on Monday when the bills come in and the math doesn't add up and the temptation is to close the door and to shut you out of our finances. God, help me trust you. Not just say I trust you, actually trust you. And trust you enough that it shows up in the math. Enough to be generous when it really cost me something. Enough to invite you into the budget conversation before the crisis. God, I pray that for all of us. In Jesus' name, amen.